When I was 12, I experienced something that still makes it hard for me to sleep some nights. Something that made my safe little hometown feel like a trap. We lived in one of those postcard-perfect neighborhoods. Quiet streets, neatly mowed lawns, neighbors who waved when you passed by. It was the kind of place where kids played outside after dark and front doors were left unlocked during summer nights. A place where danger felt like a distant myth. That illusion shattered the night my parents left me home alone for the very first time. It was a Saturday. My older sister was staying with a friend, and my parents, who had us young and still liked to go out, were headed to a restaurant with friends. They gave me a $20 bill and told me to order pizza for dinner. I was beyond excited. House to myself, pizza, and my PlayStation 2. It was the dream for any 12-year-old. I remember playing James Bond, Nightfire for hours, lost in a spy world, before pausing to call our go-to pizzeria, Johnny's, just a few blocks away. I ordered a regular pie, like always. When the doorbell rang, I ran downstairs with the $20. But the man standing on the porch wasn't the usual delivery guy. He was older, maybe mid-30s, but looked worn out, like someone who'd lived hard. Long, greasy beard, pale skin, a black trucker's hat pulled low over grimy glasses. He didn't smile. I handed him the money and said, "I need $4 back, please," like my mom told me. He stared at me as he counted the change, then casually asked, "You alone here?" It felt like a punch to the gut. I'd been warned about questions like that. My parents drilled it into me. Never tell strangers you're alone. But my brain froze. I muttered, "No, my parents are on their way home." His eyes flicked past me into the house. Just for a second. Then he handed me the pizza and the change and left. I locked the door and tried to shake it off. I even told myself I was overreacting, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I ate a few slices, wrapped the rest in foil like Mom said, and went back upstairs to play Agent Underfire. But my stomach felt tight, like I was being watched. Around 11 p.m. the doorbell rang again. I smiled, thinking my parents were home early. I jogged to the door and called out, "Mom, Dad." A man's voice answered, not theirs. "Hey, I need help." My heart dropped. It was the same voice. I asked, "Who is this?" He just repeated, "I need to use a phone, just for a second." I didn't open the door. I didn't even look out the peephole. I backed away, whispering, "No," and started toward the stairs. That's when he banged on the door and said, "Wait, please, I need help." He saw me. I froze. Through the frosted glass at the top of the door, I saw his silhouette, tall, still, staring. I bolted upstairs and ran into my parents' room. The only phone upstairs was on their nightstand. I dialed my mom's cell. She answered, laughing, probably tipsy from wine. That changed the moment I said, "Someone's at the door," asking to come in. Her tone snapped to panic. She asked if the man knew I was alone. I admitted the pizza guy asked earlier. She went quiet for a second, then said, "We're calling the police. Stay in the room, lock the door." She stayed on the line while using my dad's phone to call 911. I crouched on the floor, trying not to cry. That's when I heard it. The backyard gate creaked open. I whispered it to my mom. She told me to stay low and silent. I asked, "What if he tries the den window?" She whispered back, "Stop talking. Don't move. They're coming." Then, footsteps downstairs, inside. He was in the house. I held my breath as I heard him walk through the living room, the kitchen, then silence, then the stairs. My heart was thudding so loud, I was sure he could hear it. I ducked under the bed. The phone clutched to my ear. The intruder moved down the hallway, stopping outside each room. My sister's door creaked, then mine. Finally, he reached my parents' room. The doorknob twisted, locked. He tried again, then he just knocked, softly, 3 slow knocks. And then, nothing. I didn't dare move, didn't breathe. Minutes passed. My mom kept whispering updates. "The police are close, don't make a sound." Then, thudding footsteps downstairs. The front door creaked, then silence. Finally, a man's voice echoed up the stairs. "Tony? This is the police. You're safe. Come out slowly." I emerged shaking, still gripping the phone. 4 officers were in the house. They found the back door wide open. The den window slid open all the way. No sign of forced entry. I told them everything, including my suspicion about the pizza guy. My parents got home soon after, furious, scared, determined. The next evening they took me to Gianni's, asked me to point out the delivery guy. I didn't see him. They asked the manager, who matched my description. The manager hesitated, then said, "That sounds like Phil. He's out on a delivery." When they told him what happened, he frowned and said, "Phil's been with us for years. He wouldn't do something like that. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." We waited in the car. An hour passed. Phil never returned. We never got a call back. Never heard from the police about any updates. My parents tried to pursue legal action, but with no solid evidence, no one would take the case. Eventually, Johnny's went out of business, but I never forgot that night. I never forgot that voice at the door, and I never forgot that the pizza man knew I was alone. When I was 17, my parents and I left behind the California suburbs and moved to a remote stretch of land in North Idaho. They had just retired early and built their dream home, an enormous lodge-style house tucked miles into the wilderness, surrounded by nothing but endless forest. Not a neighbor in sight, just trees, dense old whispering forest. The place had everything: 2 stories, a home gym, full bar, pool room, and a soundproof movie theater in the basement. It felt like paradise, quiet, isolated, safe, or so we thought. At the time, I was dating my high school girlfriend. One night, while my parents were out in town for dinner, I invited her over. Just us, the movie Gladiator, and a couple of stolen beers from the fridge. We headed down to the movie room, laughing, flirting. Everything felt normal, until it didn't. Midway through the film, sometime around midnight, something in me changed. My chest tightened. My skin crawled. A deep animal sense of dread settled over me like a wet blanket. I couldn't explain it. Just this unshakable feeling that we weren't alone, that something was watching us. I tried to play it cool, not wanting to scare her, but I couldn't stop glancing at the massive uncovered windows that framed the pitch-black woods behind us. Nothing but glass between us and whatever might be out there. After the movie, I walked her to her car. The night was deathly still. She drove off, headlights vanishing into the dark. That's when I realized I'd left the lights on in the bar and movie room, so I went back downstairs. I turned off the theater lights first, then froze. My eyes were drawn, magnetically, to the giant window overlooking the backyard. That's when I saw him, a man, gaunt, wild hair, stained clothes. His smile was the worst part, wide, stretched unnaturally across his face like it hurt to hold. His eyes were unblinking, filled with something empty and feral. And in his hand, he held a knife. He was gently tapping it against the glass. Tap, tap, tap. For a second I thought I was hallucinating. I backed away slowly, heart hammering. I went to the bar room next to shut those lights off, too. That room had a sliding glass door. As I flipped the switch, I saw him again. He had moved, now standing directly at the door, still smiling, still tapping. Less than a foot away, he didn't try to come in. He just stared. I backed away and headed upstairs. Just as I reached the top step, the front door opened. My parents had just gotten home. "I think I'm losing it," I said, shaking. "I swear to God, there's a man outside with a knife, watching me." My mom went pale. My dad didn't say a word. He walked straight to the gun safe, grabbed his rifle, and stormed out into the night. When I asked my mom what was going on, she whispered, "There've been break-ins, a man wandering through the woods, trying to get into homes. You just described him exactly. The cops were called. They searched everything. But they found no tracks, no signs of forced entry, just cold, endless forest. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. That night, as I lay in bed on the second floor, right above the movie room, I heard it again. Tap, 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 metal against glass. It continued for hours, every night. Sometimes I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and it would start again, soft tapping below me. Like he never left, like he never even moved. Once I swore I heard footsteps on the roof, but I never saw him. Still I felt him, always just beyond the edge of sight, watching. Then came winter. My parents had to leave town for a few days. They were worried, so they left me the shotgun and our Rottweiler, big, sweet dog, gentle as a teddy bear. But if something was really there, he turned into a monster. One night, I heard footsteps in the snow, heavy, deliberate, crunching around the house. The dog stood, ears up, growling low. Then he barked, deep, vicious, unrelenting. That's when I heard it. Knock, 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 slow, taunting. I stayed silent, didn't move, slept with the shotgun next to me, the dog curled at my side. In the morning I stepped outside and felt my stomach sink. Footprints, human footprints, circled the entire house, stopping at every single window, like he was searching for me. I followed them into the woods. They went straight for half a mile, then started weaving, doubling back, spiraling, like he knew I'd follow, like he was playing. I turned back. Something told me, don't go any farther. That night, the tapping returned. Louder, I snapped, grabbed the shotgun, unlocked the deck door, and stepped outside onto the second-floor balcony, flipped on the floodlights, and there he was. Same smile, same dead eyes, same knife. I shouted, "Leave, or I swear I'll shoot." He didn't move. I fired a warning shot into the sky. He flinched, just barely, then slowly backed into the woods, never breaking eye contact, never blinking. That's when I let the dog loose. He tore off into the trees like lightning, barking like a demon. I don't know what happened out there, but the man never came back. And to this day, I still wonder, was he just a man? Or something else that lives in the woods waiting for glass to crack? It started with a soft thud against the glass. Melissa was sprawled on her couch, her favorite true crime documentary playing low on the TV, the only light in the room coming from the flickering screen and the occasional passing car outside. She was used to late nights alone in her small suburban home, usually unwinding after work with a cup of chamomile tea and something that didn't demand much mental energy. Tonight, however, the night air was unusually still, and that quiet was unsettling. The thud came again, just as soft. Melissa sat up, squinting toward the sliding glass door at the far end of the living room. A few branches scratched lightly against the window in the wind, or so she told herself. Maybe a stray ball from the kids next door. She shook her head and turned back to the TV, forcing her mind off it. But then something made her glance back. He was there, a man standing just beyond the glass door, framed by the faint glow of the porch light. His coat looked worn, ragged at the edges, and his stance was unnaturally still. He wasn't knocking. He wasn't trying to open the door. He was just watching her. Melissa blinked. The shadow cast over his face made it impossible to tell his expression. There was no flicker of movement, no blinking, no twitch. Just cold, blank eyes locked onto her. Her heart jumped. She grabbed her phone and flipped it to flashlight mode, then approached the door cautiously. The man didn't flinch or turn away. She tapped on the glass gently, and he did not respond. Then as suddenly as he had appeared, he was gone. The next day, Melissa called the police. The officers took the report seriously, but after inspecting the yard and the door, they found nothing. No footprints, no signs of tampering, nothing unusual. "You're probably just seeing things," one officer said, trying to sound reassuring. Could be stress, or maybe those late-night horror shows messing with your head. Just keep your doors locked. Melissa nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. That night, at exactly 11:47 p.m., he returned, always at 11:47. Melissa had started keeping track. Every night, her eyes fixed on the sliding door, waiting for him to appear. And there he was, every single night, standing motionless just outside the glass, never moving, never blinking, never making a sound. She stopped answering the phone. She stopped leaving the house after dark. She stopped inviting friends over. Her whole world began to shrink to the dimensions of her living room. Her only protection, the locked sliding door and the glowing TV screen. On the fourth night, she noticed the faint outline of muddy footprints along the porch stones, right where the man stood. But the door was locked and the footprints stopped at the edge of the porch, never crossing the threshold. Melissa took pictures, sent them to the police again, but this time they didn't come. Probably kids messing around, the dispatcher told her. Just try to stay safe. By the sixth night, Melissa barely slept. The fear gnawed at her, a cold pit growing in her stomach as 11:47 approached. She set up a cheap security camera she'd bought online, hoping to catch him on tape. The camera's red recording light blinked steadily from its place near the ceiling. At 11:45, her phone buzzed with a notification. Motion detected. Melissa's breath caught. She moved toward the sliding door, heart hammering in her chest. The door was locked, bolts firmly in place. But muddy footprints led from the porch, through the threshold, crossing the threshold, right into her living room. They trailed across the wooden floor toward the hallway. She scanned the room frantically. No man, no one. She whispered, "Hello?" But only the silence answered back. The camera, still recording, showed no signs of anyone on the porch outside. The next morning she watched the footage again and again, the unease deepening. No figure on the porch, no figure anywhere. Yet the muddy footprints were there in her living room, and the door was still locked from the inside. Melissa's hands trembled as she stared at the screen. If he wasn't outside, then where had he come from? That night, she barely closed her eyes. When she did, the man's shadowed face haunted her dreams. She dreamed of sliding doors opening on their own. She dreamed of footsteps echoing behind her in empty hallways. She dreamed she was trapped inside her own house. No escape, no rescue. On the seventh night, 11:47 came again. Melissa didn't watch the door. She sat in the darkened kitchen, clutching a kitchen knife she'd grabbed from the drawer earlier. The clock ticked down. 11:46. 11:47. A cold breath whispered past her neck. She spun around. No one there. But the sliding glass door slid open with a soft, deliberate scrape. He was inside, not standing still outside, not a shadow at the threshold. He was inside. The man, with the tattered coat and shadowed face, stepped silently from the shadows of the living room. Closer, closer. His eyes were black pits, devoid of life, yet somehow filled with an impossible hunger. Melissa backed up, knife shaking in her hand. "Who are you?" she whispered, voice breaking. No answer. Just a slow, deliberate smile curling on his lips, impossibly wide, stretching too far across his face. Then in a voice like the scraping of dead leaves, he said, "I never left." Melissa screamed. The knife dropped from her fingers. She ran, heart pounding, as the man advanced silently behind her, always just out of reach, like a nightmare stalking the edges of waking. She dashed out the front door into the cold night, the dark swallowing her as she fled down the street, never looking back. Days later, the neighbors noticed Melissa's house was empty. Windows dark, no lights, no sign she'd returned. But sometimes, late at night, if you walk past that sliding glass door, you might hear a faint thud, like a soft knock against the glass. and if you look closely, you might see the shadow of a man in a tattered coat, watching, waiting. The man at the sliding door was never truly outside. He was always waiting for the moment to step inside. 5 college friends, Emma, Jake, Lily, Ryan, and Sarah, had been planning this weekend getaway for months. The idea was simple: escape the noise of campus and city life, unplug, and enjoy a few days in the Appalachian woods. They found an old cabin listed on a local site, promising rustic charm and complete isolation. No distractions, no responsibilities. The owner, a stiff, elderly man with trembling hands, greeted them when they arrived just before sunset. His eyes flicked nervously between them as he handed over the keys. "One thing," he said quietly, voice cracked like dry leaves. "After midnight, if you hear tapping or scratching at the windows, don't look. Don't acknowledge it. Don't say anything. If you do, they'll know you see them, and then they can come in." The group exchanged amused looks. Jake smirked. "Sounds like a local ghost story. We'll keep our eyes down." Emma laughed and added, "Yeah, what could it be? Squirrels? Bears with bad manners?" The old man gave a thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just remember, don't look." That night, after a campfire full of beers and jokes, the friends turned in early. The cabin was quiet except for the occasional crackle of the old wood stove and the hum of crickets outside. Emma was the last to fall asleep. She lay in her bed, staring at the dark window across the room. At exactly 12:03 a.m., a faint tapping began. Tap, 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 software, rhythmic, moving slowly around the cabin. Emma's heart jumped. She told herself it was nothing, but curiosity gnawed at her. She pulled the curtain aside and peeked out. Pressed against the glass was a pale face. The skin was almost translucent, eyes unnaturally wide, and the mouth stretched into a grin so wide it seemed impossible, as if the person behind it wasn't entirely human. Emma gasped and screamed. The face vanished instantly, like it was never there. She bolted upright in bed and shook the others awake. "Did you see that? There was someone at the window?" "But it was wrong." Jake rolled over, annoyed. "It's probably some prank, or your imagination." But the mood had shifted. Shadows in the corners seemed deeper, the silence heavier. The cabin felt smaller, suffocating. At 12:15 a.m. tapping resumed, this time at the vent near the ceiling. They all sat together, nervous, clutching their phones and flashlights, but no one dared look. The night dragged on with strange whispers drifting through the vents, barely audible but unmistakably voices, calling names, murmuring threats. By dawn, the friends were exhausted, scared, and questioning their own sanity. They agreed to leave immediately, but when they tried to open the cabin door, it wouldn't budge. Panicking, they checked the windows, locked tight, and then from the corner of the room Emma spotted it. The pale face again, now fully visible beyond the glass, grinning wider than before, as if mocking their terror. They realized the old man's warning was no joke. It was a rule, and by breaking it, they had invited something in. Inside the cabin, the next hours were a blur of frantic searching and whispered plans. No one wanted to look at the windows, but every shadow felt alive. Whispers swirled through the vents like icy breath. Lily tried to keep calm. "Maybe if we stay quiet and don't acknowledge it, it'll leave." But Ryan shook his head. "It's not leaving. It's here." Jake swore he saw a shadow move just beyond the edge of the fireplace light. Sarah clutched her phone, calling anyone who'd answer, but there was no signal, just dead silence. Then the scratching began again, louder, right at the window beside the stove. No one looked, but the scratching turned into nails, slow, deliberate, clawing sound. Emma whispered, voice shaking, "We can't stay here. We need to break a window or something. Get out." Jake grabbed a chair and smashed the nearest window. But instead of cold night air, a rush of icy, unnatural wind exploded inside. The pale face appeared instantly in the shattered glass, grinning wider than before. And behind it, more faces, dozens of them, all pressed tight against every window, every opening, staring, waiting. The cabin's door slammed shut with a deafening bang. They were trapped. The descent hours passed, and exhaustion dulled their senses. One by one, the friends started acting strange. Sarah whispered she could hear voices in her head, telling her secrets she never knew. Ryan's eyes darkened, and he stopped responding to anyone. Lily swore the shadows were moving closer, crawling along the walls like living things. Emma realized that the faces weren't just outside the windows. They were in the room, reflected in mirrors and glass, watching. The pale-faced ones weren't ghosts. They were something else, hungry, patient, and waiting for someone to break the rule. Jake, desperate, shouted, "We never should have looked. We should have listened to the old man." Suddenly the windows fogged over and the tapping stopped. Silence. Then the door creaked open slowly by itself. The friends hesitated, unsure if it was a chance to escape or a trap. Emma stood up, trembling, and took the first step outside the cabin. The morning light was thin and gray, but the woods were silent. Too silent. No birds, no wind, just an oppressive stillness. The friends gathered, but Sarah was missing. They searched frantically, calling her name. Then from the edge of the woods a soft tapping started again. Tap, 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 and the pale face appeared in the tree line, grinning wider than any human should. Emma's blood ran cold as realization hit. The old man's warning wasn't just about the windows. It was about the woods. Because the ones who look, they don't just get taken inside the cabin. They get taken inside the woods. Two weeks had barely passed since Lila moved into her new apartment in the old district of the city. The building was aging, paint peeling, narrow hallways lit by flickering fluorescent lights. But it was affordable and close to her job. She liked the quiet hum of city life outside her window and the small balcony where she could sip her coffee. Then the texts started. The first one came just after midnight, waking her with the buzz of her phone. From unknown number, a grainy photo of her building, the one she'd just moved into. She frowned, her heart picking up pace. She didn't recognize the number, maybe a prank or someone playing games. Ignoring it, she went back to bed, but the messages didn't stop. The next night, just as she was about to lock her door, her phone buzzed again. Photo, her floor, a blurry shot showing the hallway outside her apartment, dim lighting, and in the corner, almost hidden, was the man. He looked like he had stepped out of a black and white photograph from the 1920s. Pale, almost translucent skin, stretched tight over sunken cheeks. Thin lips pulled back in an unnatural smile that didn't reach his hollow, glassy eyes. He wore an old-fashioned suit, a high collar, and a narrow tie, as if he'd wandered through time and ended up stalking her hallway. Leila blinked. She looked again at the photo. Why was he smiling like that? Her breath hitched. That night she barely slept. Every creak of the building made her jump. Her mind screamed to tell someone, but who would believe her? By morning she reported it to the police. Detective Ramirez listened patiently as Lila showed him the pictures. "We'll trace the number," he promised. "If it's someone messing with you, we'll find them." Days passed. The messages kept coming. Photo, her door. Photo, her window. Each photo showed the man closer, always lurking in the corner, smiling that same eerie smile. The police traced the number. Dead end. No records. No provider. Detective Ramirez and his team set up patrols in the building, talked to neighbors. No one had seen anything suspicious. No reports of strangers loitering. Security cameras in the building's common areas showed nothing unusual. Lila's fear deepened. She installed cameras inside her apartment, changed her locks twice. Still the messages came. No matter where she moved, even to a different complex across town, the photos kept arriving. The man was always there, always smiling. One night, after nearly a month of torment, the message was different. No photo, just 2 words. "Turn around." Leela's hands trembled. Her phone slipped from her grasp, thudding softly on the carpet. Her heart thundering, she forced herself to look over her shoulder. Nothing, just the dim glow of her living room lamp, casting long shadows. She convinced herself it was a prank. Someone had hacked her phone, or maybe this was the work of a stalker she hadn't seen. But then out of the corner of her eye she saw it, a faint shimmer near the sliding glass door to the balcony, like a heat haze or a distortion in the air. She turned quickly. There, just beyond the glass, stood the man, the pale, stretched face, the old-fashioned clothes, and the smile, that smile, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Leila screamed and stumbled back, knocking her phone off the table. The man didn't move. He didn't blink. Then the glass door slammed shut. The noise echoed in the silence of the night. Leila grabbed her phone and ran out of the apartment. The police were called again. Detective Ramirez was there within minutes. They searched the balcony. No footprints, no sign of forced entry, no man. But Leila knew what she'd seen. That smile was etched in her mind. The next day, she tried to rationalize it. Maybe exhaustion, maybe stress. She almost convinced herself until the texts arrived again that night. Photo, her reflection in the bathroom mirror, and there he was, smiling, watching, waiting. She stopped answering her phone, stopped looking at the screen. But the messages came anyway, buzzing relentlessly. Friends noticed her withdrawal. She told them it was just stress, but late at night, she could still feel the weight of those hollow eyes staring at her. Then the messages changed again. This time, no photos, no words, just a single sentence. "I'm inside." Leila's blood ran cold. She checked every door, every window, all locked tight. But the feeling grew stronger. She wasn't alone. One night, she woke to the sound of soft footsteps on the carpet. Her breath caught in her throat. The footsteps paused just outside her bedroom door. Then a soft whisper, a voice that sounded like it came from a long-dead soul. "He's still smiling." Leila bolted upright. Her eyes searched the dark, but she saw nothing. From that night, she stayed with a friend. But the messages didn't stop. She had to sell the apartment, move far away. But even miles from that place, the texts kept coming. And always, in the corner of every photo, a smiling man. 2 weeks later, Detective Ramirez sat at his desk, flipping through the files on the case. No leads, no sightings, just an empty phone number and a picture of the smiling man. Ramirez felt a chill. He couldn't shake the feeling that the man wasn't just a person, but something else. Something old, something hungry, and always smiling.